All right, so for my research paper, I delved into looking at the bilingual education program, and this program has been like in our nation for quite some time. It goes back pretty far, and it's consistently been experienced with a lot of pushback, primarily because a lot of people argued against its efficiency towards acquiring acquiring like skills in the English language as well as generating academic language. And there's like much debate with this topic because of the fact that our nation is known as the mixing pot, so we do get a lot of students that come in with different cultural backgrounds and language backgrounds, and the language that they speak back at home, including like their parents, is not typically English. And so this generates communicational issues not just with the students, but with the students' family as well. Being able to uh, discuss the educational goals and even just like the knowledge that our teachers are trying to transfer from within their lesson plans to the students becomes very difficult when the student cannot understand what the teacher is saying. And so the idea of creating a bilingual educational program where a teacher is not only fluent in the language of the students, but also has a good understanding of their cultural backgrounds, as well as being like capable of instructing like the students in an effective manner is very important towards these programs. Unfortunately, um, despite some plans of implementing these programs, the implementation was never done fully, in which we were able to collect reasonable data or even like fully understand like where the strengths and weaknesses are in this program. As far as like my research, I just found that the major weakness in the program comes from the fact that the implementation was never done with major commitment. And so, through my research, I identified some major misconceptions about this program, some of which I already addressed. One of which is the belief that this program will hinder students' ability for language acquisition of English. And so, the whole basis of the program is that lessons will be taught in the student's first language, and some parts of the lesson will also be taught in English. But the goal is to make connections between like the students' already background knowledge and experiences from their previous education, if they had previous education before coming into our schools, and trying to draw from those experiences and bring that out into the classroom, and by creating an environment that is inclusive of their language and their culture, it helps promote students to become more engaged in the lessons, and of course, speaking in their first language allows them to understand what is even being said. We've seen like many videos in this class and our other classes of teachers trying to communicate to students that do not speak English, and speaking louder or speaking slower is not going to help with their understanding. And so being able to create a curriculum that includes their first language and then draws connections between their language and the English language, it can only be seen as like a beneficial approach to educational strategies. And so, understanding that this program does not impede language acquisition is like very much grounded in some of the studies I saw where language acquisition is seen as both a socio-cultural and a developmental process. And so when we create an environment where we are including like the students' cultural backgrounds and including their language, it can actually benefit their acquisition of a new language. And so making that transition from their first language to English um, is more possible within like this type of program. Additionally, I lost my train of thought. Um, so social, cultural, developmental, and so just moving on to the next misconception. It talks about how um, like the program was a failure in many views, but the truth of the matter, as I said before, is that the program was never properly implemented. And so despite having like certain programs or policies that would go in favor, we would have other policies that would go against it, including this one, Proposition 227, which came into effect, I believe, in 1998, and it didn't get overturned until, I believe, 2016. And so this proposition basically made it illegal for schools to teach using bilingual programs. And so when we have like policies like this that are going against it, it becomes very difficult for proper funding and for proper training of teachers and administrators to come together and create effective curriculums. And then even for those curriculums to even be properly implemented, if there's like so much pushback such as this proposition, then it becomes impossible to even have like a good understanding. Like I said before, there is no like adequate like data or studies that say that this program is a success or not because of the fact that its implementation has never been done fully. And so getting past like these policies and actually like moving towards properly implementing the program will be beneficial to like either affirm or negate whether this is like a proper approach to dealing with the growing diversity in our classrooms. And because of the fact that our classrooms are becoming more diverse each year, um, it's important that we do develop some form of approach in order to avoid keeping these students outside of like their outside of this like knowledge base. You know, we need to generate an ability. We need to generate a program that allows these students to access the knowledge that is being given in our educational systems. And so starting with this, I believe it's like a really good start. And of course, continually developing and correcting and forming the communities that will come together. It's like a big part of any curriculum, whether it's in an English-only classroom or a multilingual classroom. And that leads me to like the final point that I decided to focus on, and that was the teacher training and the importance of equipping our teachers to adequately carry out this program. It doesn't matter how perfect or flawed a program is if we have properly trained teachers that are capable of dealing with the obstacles and navigating through like the gaps and in-betweens that of the program that may not have been addressed originally. Having a teacher that can properly navigate through that will help make this program more successful. And so by creating like proper training programs for our teachers and developing like their understanding of language and culture and how to make connections between that of the students' first language and English will be very beneficial, as well as emphasizing a continual training. And this is important not just for bilingual teachers, but for any teacher. I believe that the continual training will help keep teachers up with modern educational strategies, and of course developing a community that surrounds them and supports them, allows them to come together and bounce off ideas and develop curriculum together. These are all like powerful strategies for any program or any school, and especially for this bilingual educational program because it is new and it hasn't had an opportunity to really blossom into its true potential. And so giving that necessary support and training will really help it generate some kind of data for us to understand what we can do to make connections to these non-English speakers and English learners, and just better equip our students to be successful in their education and move on into their careers. And that's basically the gist of it. There's like many more things that I saw in my research, other strategies and other studies that kind of brought up more knowledge within like the misconceptions and potential of this program. But I decided to focus on these three because I felt that they were like a very important part, like as the core for how to implement this program.